have had a lot of fun out at Globe Life Field this week for All-Star Game festivities, or All-Star festivities in general, 2024. We capped it off last night with the gem, the Midsummer Classic. And so we're going to talk about your observations, our observations, and your observations, the Tolos. Right. Text in on the Franklin & Frankel Injury Attorney text line, 877-881-1053. You can also catch us on YouTube and Twitch. YouTube is 105 through the fan. Twitch is Dallas Fan Cam. Mike, how you feeling, man? Just after this stretch of All-Star Weekend all the way through Tuesday, how are you feeling after being a Rangers legend, being at all these things, Home Run Derby, All-Star Game? What's going through your mind?
One, very tired, and then I found out last night, my son's like, hey, guess what? I have a game at 4:30 Wednesday in Melissa. So now we have to leave the house at 2:30 today to take the 1-hour drive to Melissa for his 4:30 game, which there's thunderstorms in the Metroplex around that
scattered
time.
Showers I saw.
But I'm feeling great. I'm so happy that the Texas Rangers and that our Metroplex, Arlington, got to host this. I'll start off with a fun story.
Okay.
I showed you a picture of this.
Yes. This is the type of content I love, by the way.
I got a hot dog from heaven last night. Okay?
Medford, you know what that means, right?
No.
Okay. All right. So, you know the story of like the Jewish people as God releases them from slavery from the Egyptians, and
like, how are we gonna eat?
Yeah, and so God, rains down manna from heaven.
That's
Eventually,
right.
The Jewish people get all upset with God and revolt because they want more food.
Do your theology.
They want different food. They're tired of this manna thing or whatever, and they're like, "Screw you, God!" And He's like, "All right, well, you guys can go back into slavery if you want." So anyways, they decide in the 5th inning Reggie, you were there, right? Or in the middle part of the game, I would guess, maybe later, maybe 6th or 7th inning?
I believe that was towards the 7th inning because I wasn't actually in the press box at that point. I tried to go and see if I could hear from Corey Seager, Marcus Simeon, who had both been withdrawn from the game at that point.
So anyways, they say, we're about to do hot dogs from heaven. And so look up into the sky. And so people from the upper deck, I can't see where I was seated. I cannot see the upper deck above me because, it's kind of stacked on top. And I was in the 100 levels, kind of in the outfield area. So between third base and the foul pole, and right about where the awning is where you can't see up. So you look up and then all of these hot dogs have parachutes on them and they're throwing hot dogs in the wrapper with a parachute on them. And a hot dog ended up coming to me, grabbed the hot dog. I sent Reggie a picture of, hey, I caught a hot dog from heaven. And now how am I going to relate this back to why would you tell a Bible story? Like, you Bible guy, like if you don't like it. But I'm like, here's why. Because I was like the Jewish people eventually in the Bible, because then I was like, I don't really feel like a hot dog now.
No.
But I was like, it's a hot dog. And then I was like, I don't want to go get mustard and relish. I'm a mustard and relish hot dog guy.
All right. Solid hot dog.
But I was like, well, let me open it up. It's a hot dog. And I opened it up and it was kind of cold.
I was wondering. I was like, look, when did they make that hot dog to then take it up to the rafters and drop it?
It definitely wasn't warm.
Yeah.
And so I left the hot dog from heaven underneath the seat. And I didn't eat the hot dog from heaven at the All-Star Game.
Oh, ungrateful.
I know. I was ungrateful.
Unbelievable.
For the free hot dog. I offered it to the people sitting next to me, but they're like, no, we're good. But can we take a picture with the parachute and the hot dog from heaven for the All-Star Game? But yeah, I never caught a foul ball in my life.
But you caught a hot dog.
But I caught a hot dog from heaven at an All-Star Game.
So, I mean, look, may have been a little ungrateful for the hot dog from heaven, but I think we were all grateful in the All-Star Game to get this type of performance early on in the festivities.
Houck's next pitch on the way. Ohtani drives this one to right. Soto doesn't move. He looks over his shoulder, and 12 rows deep it lands. A 3-run home run for the superstar Shohei Ohtani.
I mean, Mike, this All-Star Game gave us pretty much most of the things you can imagine and hope for from an All-Star Game with Shohei Ohtani and just the crack of the bat. You can hear that. It's always fun hearing that. You got eventually you still got the Paul Skenes matchup with Aaron Judge. It went by quickly, but thankfully it seems like almost Skenes decided, I'm going to walk Soto to make sure I get this Judge thing and give the people what they want.
That was awesome that happened. I was going to mention the Paul Skenes thing in stadium because I'm sure 90% of the people listening right now watched it on television, or you didn't watch it at all, which is fine. But if you're at the game, Skenes wasn't really hitting 100 miles an hour. But then when I saw the highlights, the gun on television had him throwing 100 more. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't know if you're looking at the radar gun in the stadium. Yeah. But in stadium, he was throwing more like 98-ish, 97 at times. I think he touched, I don't know if he even touched 100, maybe one time on our board. He threw, I think, 15-ish or 16 pitches in the game. But then when I went back and I turned on MLB Network last night and I saw a couple of the pitches he threw, I was like, oh, he was touching triple digits on television radar gun.
Interesting. Okay, so I guess they're using a different
gun
gun
awesome.
in that way.
I was so pumped to see Skenes. Like, I know it's weird. I just remember hearing about him transferring from Air Force to LSU and just hearing unbelievable things about him in non-conference games. So early in the college season and last year in March, I took my two kids down to A&M to see A&M LSU because I heard of Dylan Cruz, who's second overall pick, and Paul Skenes, who ended up being first overall pick. And I remember watching him, and Chad Allen's a former guy at Duncanville, played in the majors, and I was like, Chad, like, this dude's unbelievable. Like the best college pitcher I've ever seen, and it's not close. Now, I didn't see Steven Strasburg or, like, let's say Mark Pryor, for instance, but, like, so it was crazy. I'm sitting there with my son going, Reggie, I cannot believe that guy that I saw, that I was like, this is unbelievable in March at College Station, that he started the All-Star Game the next year and was by far the show. That was the thing, that he goes from LSU to starting in the All-Star Game, and hopefully he can continue it. I know that if Spencer Strider were to get healthy, he's pretty spectacular too. But Paul Skenes has a lot more behind him than Strider does.
Yeah, it really felt like a lot of first-time All-Stars made their imprint on this game. We talk about Paul Skenes. We were super excited to see Mason Miller, and I even texted you. I was like, look, we're getting Mason Miller Ohtani, not just Mason Miller throwing 103, but he's also going us against Ohtani, and he was gassing those things past the dude who hit the 3-run homer earlier in the game.
Hardest fastball in the history of the All-Star Game?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's
103.6.
That's awesome. I mean, that was when he comes in and he throws it. Obviously, I'm off to the side and up, but the ball is just on the catcher. And you can see the hitter's reaction. And when you're watching from that distance, it's amazing that guys are able to time it up.
Yeah.
Because you see it and you're like, it's out of his hand and then in the catcher's mitt. And yet they're at times, I know not last night, great, but at times they're able to time it up just a little bit, or when a manual Class A comes in, stuff like that. But that was the fun part of really being there is like, you're like, every matchup was great. And then I thought, we got to the 5th inning, Reggie, I don't know what you thought. I was like, because my son was asking me about substitutions. Exactly. As the American League started making substitutions, I'm like, usually guys get 2 at bats, and then it was like third time through. Now I was like, maybe the National League's just going to play the starters the whole game.
That's what I was waiting. I was like, hey, are we going to get all these other guys in the game? I mentioned first time All-Stars. Also, we were trying to figure out who are we calling for MVP. You went with Bobby Witt Jr. I was like, look, I think that Ellie De La Cruz can get it. We were both wrong. It was a first-timer from the Boston Red Sox, this man right here.
This is the guy that will take the extra base if he puts it in play, and this one may be out of play. He smacks one to right, and it is way out of here. Jaren Duran about 25 rows up, right center field, a 2-run home run, and now the American League is on top, 5-3, a no-doubter that traveled 413 feet.
That was the difference in the Midsummer Classic. Ended up being 5-3. Jaren Duran is the MVP of this. And one of the things I loved about this was also just hearing his interview when we got to stay after. And he just seemed so excited about it. I think that was a thing that you got to get a little bit of a feel of being in. And I imagine you probably got it on the TV broadcast as well. I just can't speak to that necessarily. How much fun they were having, especially the first-timers. And you could see that it meant something to these guys.
Yeah, it's a super dream come true to make the major leagues. You get to be part of that kind of 1% of guys that are even like good high school, good college players that end up making the major leagues. And then out of that 1%, you're able to be the guys that make all-star teams or an all-star team. It was pretty spectacular. I'll tell you what, Reggie, in that inning, how crazy was it in the building for 3 seconds as Corey Seager launched a ball thought, oh my God, Corey Seager has, like, for us Texas Ranger fans, has done it again, and he just hit it to the biggest part of the field, or he might have been the MVP, because that would have made it 4-3, right?
Absolutely.
Because he came up with nobody on base in that inning, and he flies out, I don't know what it was, 405 to center field, where it's 410 where he hit the ball.
I wonder, let's play the audio here, Med, for this cut too. I want to hear if the audio caught just how loud it got with the ball off of Corey Seager's bat with that long fly out.
And here it comes from Green. Seager swings and makes good contact. Center field, deep. Hernandez on the track, and he reels it in. A little bit like Bobby Witt Jr. last night in the Derby. For a while, people were on their feet thinking, we have it here.
You didn't have to take that swipe at Bobby Witt Jr. there, but yeah, you could have heard that game right here on 105.3 The Fan. Yeah, you can hear it. The whoa, and then you hear people go, oh, when they realize it's going to be short, it's not making it. There were MVP chants when he came up to the plate as well.
That's awesome. I didn't hear that from where I was seated. Seated? Seated. Seated is the word.
Yes.
Seated. But I was sitting next to a guy who was one of Hunter Green's like summer league coaches in middle school or high school. So he was there, specifically flew in from the Los Angeles area to see Hunter Green
of the Reds,
who ended up getting the loss.
It feels weird that I get it. Like, it's a baseball game. It's scored as such. There's going to be a winning pitcher and there's going to be a losing pitcher. And Hunter Green ends up being the losing pitcher. It just feels weird in the all-star context. Everybody's an all-star. This is a celebration of them. You are the loser today, you know?
Yeah. I did see this, though, going to the stadium. I was not expecting this. I started walking to the stadium, and Carlos Correa's family was walking to the stadium. I didn't know he was at the game. I assumed he was just going to be away from it.
Sure.
But so I think he really was hurt.
Right.
Because I think he did want to play in it because he had 8 or 9 family members like walking to the stadium. So.
I also had that moment when I was down listening to Marcus Semien give his post-game remarks. We're right next to the AL clubhouse, and as he's talking, Carlos Correa walks right by me, and I'm like, oh, okay, in like a nice cream suit, looks good. I was just like, oh, okay, so he is here, got you. But that does remind me, I was a little surprised, and maybe I shouldn't have been, at the amount of boos that Yordan Alvarez.
Yeah. And Carlos Correa, when they announced his name on the All-Star team, he got booed for that one moment.
But Yordan carried all the boos of the Astros, and we've talked about it. Like, in theory, you don't really have a great reason to boo him. I mean, he is an Astro, right? That's enough reason, I guess.
But he was not on the 2017 team. My son was asking me, and I said he made the major leagues in 2019 at some point in that season, I'm pretty sure. Because I know his rookie card is in the 2020 Topps rookie cards. So I'm like, I think he made the major leagues at some point in 2019.
But yeah, I mean, a fun experience all the way around. If you had to give a letter grade to 1, the game itself last night, and 2, the All-Star experience, Mike, how do you think that you would grade it?
The game for me was an A. And then the experience for me was an A+. I don't want to get into that right here. We're up against it. I will talk about that in Baseball Nuggets. I'll tease it right now. The jerseys and the experience.